culture, gender, sexuality, tradition, business, and so much more. Hi, I'm Regina Gershman.
And I'm Dr. Sam Dubé. Together, we're going to take you on an extraordinary journey with engaging people from around the world, starting from right here in Ottawa, the capital of Canada.
Hello, my beautiful friends, and welcome back to the Etiquette Show. I'm Conchetta Rose. Mary Rodwell is recognized internationally as one of Australia's leading researchers and writers in the UFO and contact phenomenon areas. Mary is an author, founder, and principal of Australian Close Encounter Resource Network, which was established in 1997 to provide professional counseling, support, hypnotherapy, and information to individuals and their families with anomalous paranormal experiences and abduction. Today on the Etiquette Show, we have with us Mary Rodwell. Mary, thank you so much for being here with us today.
It's an absolute pleasure, Conchetta.
So nice to meet you. And I'm so glad that you got up so bright and early in Australia to be with us here today in New York. That's fabulous.
You're most welcome.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to just jump right into it. I have a lot I want to ask you here, and I know you have all the resources in your brain. So the official representation by governments and science is that we as humans have yet to be in contact with sentient, intelligent life in the universe, yet people continue to report alien close encounters on Earth. So if alien contact with humans is in actuality real, why does it continue to be repressed knowledge?
Very good question. And the truth embargo is there for a lot of reasons. I believe, and certainly my research is saying, that the governments have known 70, 80 more years that this is a reality, because they've actually been and got retrieved crash craft, etc., etc. But of course, this has all been covered up for a number of reasons. And one of the things that your audience may need to know is, first of all, yes, I think initially it was to protect the public from panicking. They felt that if people knew this was going on, what could we do about it? But there were other agendas that came in, and one of them was the technology that, in fact, they have reverse engineered, and we get some of it now. But it was all of this that made it even more crucial to keep it from the public. They also didn't want people to know that there was a reality to these so-called abductions as well, that would scare a lot of people. So it was a really complex reason why they kept it quiet. But the problem with that is, as you've already stated with my work, I've worked with over 3,500 families and children across the globe that have had these experiences. And the problem with that is, because it's not acknowledged as a reality, these individuals lead lives of confusion, fear, absolutely terrified of what's going on, because they don't know whether it's real or not. And if it is real, nobody's acknowledging it. So for me, as a therapist, as a support person, that has been what I'm dealing with, is the trauma of that truth embargo.
Right. Wow. 3,500, you said?
Yes.
Wow. So, okay, so they can't all be making up the same story, right?
Conchetta, what you need to understand is, for a majority, they are absolutely credible. They will be ringing me up saying, I'd rather you told me I was crazy than this is real. And they may be lawyers, doctors, nurses, social workers. They could be, a farmer. Children, 3, 4, 5-year-olds are talking about this. So you've got this, and it's right across the globe in terms of culture, belief systems. You don't have to believe in UFOs to have an experience. This isn't, oh, do you believe in it? It's more, well, I've experienced it, so I have to believe in it. Right. And that's what people don't understand.
Wow. So how do aliens seek to make contact with humans on Earth? In what forms do they contact?
Well, there are many different forms, and mostly on on films and what have you. You've got the little greys we call the Zetas, sometimes humanoid ones. You might get reptilian-looking ones or whatever, but there's mantis-looking ones, ant people. There are crystalline beings. There are light beings. There are feline beings, lion beings. There's a whole range of different humanoids. And what, your audience needs to know, they've been visiting us all through history. But what we've done in the past is make them gods. So because that's been the way that we've perceived them with their advanced technologies and what they have. In fact, they've accepted the role of gods, I think, too. At least some of the species have, as a way of controlling humans. So they have been visiting us all through the ages, all through the centuries, but it has been interpreted primarily as these gods that have come and visited us. And of course, in many cultures, they're still worshipped.
Wow. So do you think, because you're blowing my mind a little bit right now, and I know I only asked you 2 questions, but do you think there's an element in human nature that gets an overwhelming amount of information and just says, no, that can't be. And that's what's suppressing some of this knowledge?
Well, it's a real cognitive dissonance for many people who, particularly if they've had, a higher education, they're a lawyer or they're a doctor or a psychiatrist or, a physicist having these experiences. They know how it's going to be perceived by their colleagues or the general public. So living the life where you are a professional MD, for example, and yet on another level, you're having interactions with these different beings. And that in itself is making it very difficult because modern psychology, conventional psychology says, unless you can use your 5 senses to experience it, it's not real, which of course is actually a load of nonsense because we are multidimensional, because we do have experiences outside our physical senses. And that is what has to change. Also, not just the truth embargo from the government saying, we know they're visiting us and they're actually some of our ancestors, because they are, because they have interfered with our DNA. But that's another part of this. But we've got to change the whole psychological profile of what is normal in terms of we are actually multidimensional and we have experiences outside of our physical senses, which everybody has, but most people are very wary about saying, oh, well, I sort of sense this, or I have a feeling about this, or I sometimes see strange lights, or I see spirits, because, that's a bit too scary, isn't it? And maybe there's something wrong with you. We've got to stop that nonsense and create a true model of our human experience.
Yeah, it seems like you're talking about acceptance, really, which is something that I think our human race struggles with across the board in many different areas with acceptance. But it is what you said. I think that concept of, well, if I'm feeling something, feelings aren't concrete, right? So I must be creating it somehow. That's wild. That's wild. Can you give us some examples of both benign and hostile experiences humans have had with aliens?
I can, and I will say that for many, and why I wrote the book Awakening was because for many people initially, they may be really scared because who's coming and taking me at night?
Right.
Who are they? Why are they doing it? What's happening to me? Why me? All those questions create fear because they don't know. And of course, they think that, or maybe I'm just crazy anyway. So the fear may be I'm just crazy. So that creates a perception of the interaction. Whereas over a period of time, they may come to understand that the beings they're interacting with are actually benevolent rather than, wanting to damage them in some way. But that takes a process of waking up to this reality and looking at it, whereas a lot of people are too scared to. So sometimes they will judge something as bad until they have better understanding of it. And that's what we found with our surveys, that when we surveyed 4,200 people with the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation, we discovered that 85% of them, after they'd gone through the fear, changed their attitude towards the beings and found that they had a psycho-spiritual transformation. 85%. 15% were still fearful. And that is because of two things. We do, it does suggest there is a small minority of self-serving types of beings, which, is certainly are more minimal than the benevolent ones. And that is one part. And there's another thing that, your audience are going to find difficult to believe, that some of the fear is because they've been abducted, not by these beings, but by a certain deep state military that take them to find out about their experiences and often traumatize them by interrogation, drugs, etc., to shut them up so they won't talk about it because they don't want the public to know. So sometimes it's our own people that are doing that. So it's quite complex. It's not just straightforward. So we've got some that may have their own agenda, but on the most part, we're seeing literally a benevolent interaction, because I believe from evidence in our DNA that we are part of them as well, that we are in fact intelligently designed. We are not just the indigenous, if you like, Homo sapien. We are actually, we have in our DNA some of their DNA.
Now, how do we know that for sure? Do we have alien DNA in our possession somehow that we can test and compare? How do we know that?
Well, I've gone into that a lot in my book, The New Human, and there are molecular biologists, geneticists, but the one that was the most famous that talked about this was Dr. Francis Crick, co-founder of the DNA molecule, who said that he believed we were intelligently designed and his understanding of the genetics. And what they've done, whistleblower geneticists have said they've seen evidence of the splicing and the reattachment of certain parts of our DNA. Okay? So they've seen the evidence that suggests we are designed. We also have, and this is fact, 223 genes that are a sideways insertion of genetic material in our DNA that no one can explain, all to do with higher psychological functioning. After we had Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal, we had this missing link, and suddenly Homo sapiens sapiens appeared with twice the brain size out of the blue. No one can explain it. All this is part of evidence. There is, and of course we have what they call dormant DNA, junk DNA that they can't explain, which is 90 to 95% of our DNA is still unknown in terms of what it does. So put this all together, you've got a pretty good idea something's going on.
Yeah, I'd say so, right? Wow. So what types of aliens are contacting humans? Aliens from our own universe, or is there evidence of other universes?
Good question. And it is more than just the physical extraterrestrial ones in our universe. There are some that are interdimensional, extra-dimensional, trans-dimensional, and some that appear to be coming from our future.
What? Okay.
So that just expands the picture a little bit for you.
Greatly. So in a sense, we sort of don't know what types are coming contacting in that way, because they could be coming from different dimensions, but also could be coming from a different time. Yes. Right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, absolutely. So contact with these intelligences can be very physical, but there are many that are visited by light beings that are coming from another dimension, for example. And this is why it's so complex, and why the interactions can be very different. For example, what we discovered with the surveys we did with the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation was that 70 out of the 4,200, 75% of interactions were out of body. Only 25% were physical. So that takes it to a whole new level as well.
Right. So what do you mean exactly by out of body?
Okay. So we're saying that their consciousness, their spirit, their soul, which is talked about as, a consciousness. We know that we can go out of body. People talk about astral traveling, going out of body, having near-death experiences, an out-of-body experience, for example. Many people do lucid dreaming, this kind of thing. And of course, remote viewing is something the governments do on the quiet to spy on other governments and what have you. And they use psychic spies to do that, using their consciousness to go and spy. I mean, all of this is old news, really,
right.
For those into this. What it's saying is we're not just a physical container. We have a consciousness that leaves when we die, but we can also leave when we go to sleep at night. We go out of body, we go to other places and what have you. And a lot of people who can do lucid dreaming actually can control where they go and what they do. This is not new news. This has been something that, many of the scientists are exploring. And what we need to explore more is consciousness, what actually we are and what is consciousness, because we are all a physical being, but have a spirit or a soul or a consciousness that is what is inhabited in that physical container.
Okay. I'm trying to absorb it all, Mary. This is so fascinating to me. Some alien contactees refer to aliens not only in our own solar system, but underground. Is this? Yes. Can you explain that a little further?
Certainly, there is evidence that we have some of these intelligences have been living underground as long as we've been on the surface. And certainly there seems to be evidence of that. Some talk about some of the reptilians, maybe always there, and also possibly some of the zetas, some of the greys as well, not necessarily all of them, but there may be others as well as other humanoids as well that have been there throughout the eons and whatever. The government, I believe, absolutely know this. And again, a lot of this is kept quiet for lots of different agendas, because what they can gain or what they can. Conchetta, with all of this, is the truth embargo has meant that we are fed a great deal of information that's inaccurate right across the board in every area, from anthropology, archaeology, biology, theology, you name it. We have been given an edited version of who we are, what we are, and what we're capable of. And that has to change. It's time the public was told the truth, because it's our heritage.
That's a very fascinating way of putting it too, that we deserve to know, because, as you said, it is our heritage. It's where we come from. And it's funny, I'm kind of having a silly thought of these DNA testings that we can do to find out our heritage. Wouldn't it be fascinating if there was a section where you could be like 12% reptilian, or you know what I mean, like 14% alien in some capacity, and then we could actually do research on what that means. I think it would certainly help in terms of genetic diseases, for instance, knowing where that came from, knowing how it developed. How can we handle it in the future? That's an enlightening way of putting it. So what are some of your insights on alien abductions?
Well, I will say in many cases they're not abductions. Okay. There is actually a consent part of this, even although initially the person may not be aware that on some level they've consented. So not all of them are without that consent, except for the consent may be in their subconscious, not in their conscious mind. So if I take somebody in hypnosis to an experience that they've had, where they've maybe had missing time, and wanted to know what happened on that journey. What was the extra hour that they've lost, that they don't know what happened, but they saw lights, and all of a sudden, an hour or two later, they find themselves back in the car thinking, well, what am I doing here? What's happened? So when you take them to that experience, one of the questions that I will ask them in their, in their subconscious, superconscious state, and I will say, have you on any level consented to this experience? The most common answer is yes, but before I came here. So in other words, as a soul, before they're actually incarnated, they've had an agreement with a particular species or intelligence that at some point they would have these experiences. And I will actually say to them, does that feel right to you? Does that resonate to you? And they'll go, yes. But sometimes they'll say, I didn't realize it was going to be that difficult or that traumatic or whatever. But there has been on that level a consent in many cases. So this isn't, it's just that there's so much that in our conscious state, we don't realize is going on that other level of our awareness. And that is bringing that together so that people have answers. They can find out who these beings are on the craft. What people may not know is when we did our surveys with that 4,000 people, was 50% of them described having healing procedures on board craft, where they were healed from a whole range of illnesses when they were taken on board craft. This is not generally known because all we get mostly in the fiction and the media is the scary stuff, the fear stuff, the sensational stuff, not this information. And that is what's so wrong about all of this as well, is everything is generated through a fear program rather than saying, well, hold on a minute. Actually, when they get to understand what's going on, many of them feel very connected to the beings that they are interacting with. In fact, they will say they're my family, because on a soul level, many of them are aware that they have been connected to that particular species, or may have been actually one of them before they incarnated into human form. And that's why we've really got to change this nonsense that we're just a physical container and that we, our five senses are the only true reality, when we are, in fact, interacting with our multidimensional reality all the time, with the intuition, with the knowing, with the sensing, with those insights, those suddenly light bulb moments. And many of these that have experiences are given information, complex information. It might be to do with physics, it might be to do with origin of the species. They may be downloading a whole heap of information, which is part of their communication with these intelligences that they've connected to. So there's a lot more to the experience than somebody just being taken against their will. So I don't use the word abduction. I use the word experiencer for that reason, because they're experiencing something. An abduction always is about, I've had no choice. Whereas in fact, in many cases, they have had a choice. They've just not remembered it.
Wow. Has there ever been a situation where someone has had an experience and doesn't want to have any more experiences, and somehow that connection ceases somehow?
There have been both adults and children that have actually said, I don't want any more of this. And it has stopped and it's being listened to, because the benevolent ones understand that we may go through periods where it's all too much for us. And they will respect that. But I've often spoken to a few that have done that and afterwards said, I missed it. And after a while, I asked them to come back.
Wow.
So there you go.
Wow. Well, it is a very, in my world, it's a rare experience. I don't think I know anyone who has had any contact. So to me, it would be almost like a very special person that got chosen to have these experiences, albeit them maybe frightening, but it seems very special. It seems like people are chosen. Is that correct? Or do you think it's more random?
Well, we found that it's intergenerational. So in other words, it goes through family lines. So that if someone comes to me with experiences, I will ask about their siblings, and I will ask about their mum and dad. Was there anything about mum and dad that was different or unusual? And they may say, oh, well, dad was all into UFOs. And I think, right, well, there's the intergenerational link.
Right.
And it would take it back. Sometimes it's both. But not only that, they will have children that are also having experiences as well. So there is a genetic factor with some of them, but you would be surprised at how many people are having experiences, that it isn't rare in the slightest.
Right.
In fact, it's just that people don't talk about it because they don't want to be looked on as crazy, or there's something wrong with them, or getting judged for it. But you would be amazed at how many actually do. I mean, every single day I'm getting another 4, 5 new emails of people having experiences every single day, not just once a week.
Right.
That will give you some idea. And that's the ones that know about me. All right.
Mhm.
There are probably hundreds more that don't even know where to go, who to talk to, because you don't go and talk to your psychiatrist about this or a psychologist, do you? Because you're going to end up in hospital medicated or something like that, aren't you? So people are very careful about talking about it because so many have ended up in hospitals medicated. And I spoke about that in Awakening of a young girl at 14, went to her doctor and said to her doctor she was seeing aliens, and immediately he diagnosed her as schizophrenic, put her on a cocktail of medication. She nearly took her life 2 or 3 times with suicide until about 19, when she saw a talk show where they were talking about this and realized that maybe her experiences were real. And that's when she contacted me. She's one person out of hundreds that have had similar experience, probably thousands, even possibly millions, because of this truth embargo that says it's not real. And that's why, for me, disclosure is so vital. It's not just, oh, well, we're seeing craft, we can't identify them and whatever. Who's controlling the craft, actually, is what is important. And what are they doing here? And what is happening to the population of planet Earth that is interacting with them? That is the bit that matters to me, is what matters. And to all those having experiences.
Wow. I'm going to ask you a question, very off topic, but do you think that things that have happened in our human history in terms of mass disease or anything like that has any relation to intelligent life, bringing it to us, trying to control our population in some way? Like, the thing that comes to mind is COVID for me, because it's relevant nowadays, you know. So but do you think they're trying to control our population? That's my question.
I think we have human beings very much trying to control our population at this moment in time, so we won't get into that. Whether are having interactions with the self-serving beings behind them, that may be the case in some. But I'm going to take you on a little journey to the fact that I work with people in past lives, all right? So I can take somebody into a past life. And this was one particular past life of a young lady who was curious about a past life. She went back to medieval times where she was a wise woman, a healer, and she said that she was put together herbs to heal the villagers and whatever. And so I said to her, so where did you learn about all the herbs and which ones were the ones to use and all this kind of stuff? Thinking maybe her grandmother or mother or someone. She said, I learned it all in the woods. So I said, so who was in the woods to teach you all of this? And she said, it was a little grey being with big black eyes that showed me the herbs that I needed to do healing. So there you go. All right?
Wow. Yeah.
They've been with us all through history. And the indigenous peoples in Australia talk about the beings, the Wangina, that taught them and showed them where water was, how to live, how to find different foods and whatever. And it's the beings from the Seven Sisters, the Pleiades, that interact with them. They call the Wangina. So when you ask about this, many of these benevolent beings are actually have been assisting humans in many ways.
Right.
So that's a bit of a weird one for you, but just to give you an idea.
I mean, I asked, but does it bother you sometimes to watch? I don't know if you do watch any science fiction with alien movies or anything like that, alien shows. Does it bother you sometimes that, besides E.T., I'm trying to think where I saw an alien movie where the alien was benevolent, where the alien was there to be, sharing good information. And in almost every other case, they're trying to wipe out the human race for the most part, right? And inexplicably, they just want to kill us. Does it bother you to see stuff like that?
It more than bothers me because it's an agenda.
Yeah.
And it's an agenda from our planet that is trying to control the understanding we have of these intelligences as that, because they've got superior technology, they're more aware that they can take us out at any time, so we must fear them. All of that is an agenda, and it's propaganda, because that way we are controlled. And, this is the biggest issue around all of this, is because many of those that tell me about their experiences, a lot of the time when they're on the craft, they'll be shown images of what we're doing to the planet and being told you can't do this anymore to your planet. You're harming the planet. You're harming the environment. You can't do this to each other. This is not, higher consciousness. And so the whole purpose of many of these intelligences, I believe, is to raise consciousness, not put it down into this barbaric, aggressive behavior that many of us on this planet still think is the way to go. We kill each other if we don't like them, or they're the wrong color or the wrong belief. It's primitive, and it's adolescent, to say the least.
Do you think on any level they're sort of like fed up with our immaturity in that sense? Do you think they're just like, these people don't get it? We're here to help. We're here to encourage things and keep the earth healthy, and they're just ready to take us out because of this group think that's happening?
What they're actually doing is raising consciousness, and by interacting, I haven't mentioned the fact that a lot of them have memories of going up on spacecraft and being taught how to use their awareness, like taught how to use their psychic abilities, such as healing, such as, if you like, using their consciousness to create a positive outcome, and all of this. This is what they're often taught on board craft, as well as the true nature of humans and what our potential is. So what they're doing, rather than saying, oh, well, they're all children, we can't do anything with them, they are apparently very concerned about our nuclear capability and that we could destroy our planet. So they've accelerated that program where more and more now, this has been part of their agenda, is to raise this consciousness. And the children talk about this. They talk about healing abilities. They talk about being able to sense truth. They talk about being able to communicate with animals and changing the consciousness. So we've got these new upgrades of human, I call them, with the higher consciousness. And these children are coming in droves now. And in metaphysical terms, they're called crystals, indigo children, children of light, all this. They're also mislabeled as ADHD, Asperger's, dyslexic, and some forms of autism, because they are wired differently and they don't behave the same. They're given these labels, where in fact many of them are these new star kids, the ones that have got higher awareness and understanding, and we are labeling them all this because they're so different. What's different about them is you can't program them in the same way into that third dimensional limited reality And that is, deliberately, I think it's deliberate to stop them being programmed into the old mindset, the old 3D mindset. And that's what I talk about with the new human.
What do you think? I mean, it just all this information, and I do see a through line in our society. This is, I don't want to say this is just one topic, but this is just one topic in a long line of topics that we're not giving all the information on. We're not allowed to form our own opinion because we haven't been given all the pieces to those puzzles, So, I mean, what do we do? How do we continue to reach? So I'm not being contacted presently by anyone, but I would like to reach a higher level of consciousness. How can I do that in my daily life, without the help of an intelligent being?
It's all about frequency. And as you reach a certain level of frequency or awareness, then the intent that you have to connect and contact these intelligences is that they recognize that. They'll recognize you by your frequency. To give you an example of that, I was speaking to a gentleman in the US who had a 9-year-old son. And his 9-year-old son, I was speaking to his father, said, "Can I speak to Mary?" And I said, "So why do you feel you can speak to me?" And he said, "Well, Mary, it's because of your frequency." Okay. So as we get to a higher consciousness, and that's, everyone that's raising their frequency, starting to see a bigger picture, starting to realize that we're all connected, and to spiritually want to grow, you're actually bringing your frequency into a higher frequency, which enables them of these higher frequencies to connect with you. So if you have the intent, that intent is going out as a frequency to these intelligences, saying, "Oh, there's someone over there that's ready now. Let's see what we can do here." So it's all about you having that desire to go to a higher spiritual awareness. And some will do it after they've had a near-death experience, a shamanic experience, a healing experience. Everyone has a different way of accessing or being ready for that next step. And this is happening globally. So it doesn't happen just because you're seeing a UFO. It could happen because, you're going and learning meditation, for example, which changes again that intent. I want to expand my consciousness. I want to have more awareness in terms of who I am, what I am, what's this all about, and being a better person, and wanting the desire to be a better person. That's what they pick up, that frequency.
Well, I love that. Mary, please tell our friends where they can reach you or read your books or learn more about you and what you do every day.
Very easy, either my website, isnt.com.au, or maryrodwell.com.au. Google me, I'm on Facebook as well. Really easy to contact, and you can see all the information there. And there's lots of lovely other interviews, as well as what the beautiful one Jess has done right now. So very easy.
Mary, thank you so much for sharing all of your information here with us today. Thank you so much for getting up early and being with us today. We so appreciate your time. And change your frequency. Work on that. Thank you. Bye, guys. Next time. Hello, my beautiful friends, and welcome back to the Etiquette Show. I'm Conchetta Rose. Today on the Etiquette Show, we have writer, artist, curator, educator, co-founder, and production designer for Fog Lifter Journal and Press, a queer literary collaborative whose mission is to provide a platform for diverse writing and queer points of view, Miah Jeffra. Miah, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
Now, where are you? Because it looks glorious.
I am in Sayulita, Mexico. At the moment. It's one of the few benefits of requiring myself to teach online for the pandemic.
Be anywhere, right? That's fabulous. So tell our friends right away, what is Fog Lifter Journal and Press?
Sure. Fog Lifter Journal and the subsequent press is a literary collaborative that elevates and features queer and trans voices across the spectrum. The reason why I founded it was to work towards decentering the white male cis supremacy in literature, and to begin to provide more opportunities for representation across the queer spectrum and the trans spectrum in particular. So we really champion voices that are operating in the margins rather than, the kind of shooting for the mainstream kind of representations of reality.
That's beautiful. And how long have you established this?
We're in our 6th year.
Amazing. Well, congratulations on that. That's fabulous.
Thank you.
So why do you believe it's so important to have a queer literary magazine?
There weren't many out there when we founded it, and there still aren't. Because literature already struggles to be funded. We watch, literary magazines come and go, and especially ones that don't cater to like a mainstream audience. But that unfortunately makes it so that writers and readers don't see themselves reflected in the work that they're encountering in the bookstore and, online. And so we found it really important that those voices are there, in order, because art represents life, right? And so people see themselves in the art that is produced. And we wanted to make sure that, these young queer and trans writers and young queer and trans people are seeing their experiences, so that they don't feel so entirely marginalized. We want to celebrate them.
Yes, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Well, that makes it vitally important then, doesn't it, in our society?
Yes. It's definitely an act of social justice, for sure.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Oh, that gave me chills. I love that phrasing. Yes, it sure is. So do you have a mixture then of professional writers as well as maybe more amateur writers?
We do, actually. So, we'll publish people who are very well established, like Eileen Miles, Kazim Ali, Danica Kelly. But then we will also publish folks that it's their very first publication. So it's across the spectrum, and the community is very enthusiastic about it. So we get a lot of well-established writers contributing to us as well. Yeah. They want to help kind of elevate the voices that we find.
Yes, that's beautiful. I love that. It's a networking opportunity too, isn't it?
Oh yeah, for all of them.
Yes, yes. Oh wow, I love that. I want to hear more about that. How can writers reach you? How can they, get on board?
So there is kind of a broad accepted submission process for all literary magazines, and we're part of that. It's called Submittable. And we have free submissions. We pay our writers. They can obviously find us through all of the social media channels and our website. But a lot of writers know where to go. They know to submit their work on this Submittable platform, because most literary magazines are kind of affiliated with it.
Okay. Oh, that's great. So what kind of topics do you cover in the magazine? All kinds?
We really want to get at the nuanced experiences that typically are not represented in mainstream literature. So, a lot of times the queer narratives that we see most made visible are like the coming out narrative, or, the closeted person who's in love with someone, right? It's like there's a couple narrative tropes, but we don't do that. We do the experiences that are more common among queers. Yeah, we have a coming out story, right? But we also want to show the transition story. We want to show, the real complicated natures of things. For example, there's a phenomenon that's nuanced where it's like, let's say, a trans male makes the transition and goes through the hormones. And then though he may have been attracted to women when he was viewed biologically as a woman, something happens when he goes through the hormones and he becomes a gay male, you know? I mean, things like that that are really, they're more illegible for a mainstream audience, but are very much a part of, you know, the fabric and complexity of the queer spectrum. We like to kind of make those narratives visible, those experiences, and they speak more to a queer and trans audience so that they can be like, yeah, you know, there's something refreshing about seeing my experience, you know, on the page.
Yeah. You don't feel alone then either. You don't feel like the only one in the whole world who's ever experienced this moment. You know, I must be bad or punished or something horrible, negative. And instead it's, no, this is a part of life. This is a part of my moment, my journey. And look at all these other people who have experienced it. This person right here on the page who I don't know had the same experience. That makes you feel connected even when you are separated. Yeah.
Right. And we, you know, a lot of the queer and even trans narratives that have been widely published, again, are more legible to a mainstream audience, but they tend to be kind of monocultural. They tend to be mono character. And so it almost stereotypes queers. Whereas when you see their like full, nuanced, complex experiences, you know, they're more human. You know, they're less kind of like a sideshow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like space.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I can feel free to share my story because I'm not going to be judged. No one's going to throw it out, you know, and no one's going to say, get this out of here.
Right.
So that's beautiful that you're creating that for the masses in that way.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, me and a bunch of wonderful editors. I mean, we have an incredible group. So talented, so conscientious. So it's definitely, it's a family affair.
Yeah. So I would imagine you get several submissions a day.
We do. Yeah.
So how do you decipher which ones to choose and when?
That's a great question. You know, we mainly decide, you know, is this voice fresh? Is this representing, you know, individuals who might not have been, you know, have not seen themselves on the page? You know, we think about that. We also think about how, you know, the writing, the art itself, the craft is queering, what we call queering the established craft, meaning that, you know, it's not adhering to, you know, what is considered, you know, good professional writing. Mm-hmm. You know, we're interested in those voices that kind of chisel away at that, because who has established what is good writing? Well, namely straight white men, you know? Right. And so, we want to push that envelope, push that idea and kind of broaden out the aesthetic of what good writing is. So we tend to be real excited by unique voices, voices that are unapologetic and bold, but also, you know, language their experience in a way that's exciting.
Mm. And do you have a set number of how many submissions you accept?
No, just whatever is exciting to us. Yeah.
Isn't it make up all the rules?
That's right. Work for yourself.
Exactly. Be your own boss. Yeah. So tell me, what is the Violence Almanac?
Oh, okay. So I'm a writer as well. And the Violence Almanac is a collection of short stories that is addressing the various ways that violence exists in our culture, and really looks at systems that have perpetuated the violence, you know, namely, you know, racial capitalism, you know, colonial ideas, certainly, you know, the patriarchy and the misogyny that kind of trickles down from it. And so I look at violence as, you know, what we typically would think of, domestic abuse, you know, assault, but also disease, and, you know, various kind of microaggressions. I look at it all as violence, and I try to language where all of those things kind of come from and how we can mitigate them in all of the stories.
Wow. So so these are all been written by you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And how many short stories are there?
There are 12 to represent each month.
Wow. So you are busy.
A little bit.
Wow. So, okay. So there's one per month for the whole year, and people can buy this, or can they read it online, or where can they get it?
So it's releasing next Friday on the 19th. I don't even know what day it is. But it's releasing with Black Lawrence Press. It's a press out of New York that have, I mean, a lot of wonderful writers on their roster. I'm very excited about it. They're an incredible editorial team and, you know, book design team. So, and this is my first fiction. I've had 2 other books of nonfiction, but this is my first fiction, so kind of a debut.
Wow, fabulous! Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Amazing. So again, tell our friends where they can follow you, where they can follow all your wonderful accomplishments here.
So my website is miahjeffra.com, and I think all my social media is the same. And then even more so, I'd love for people to go to foglifterpress.com. So you can see all the projects that we're doing there as well. In addition to the magazine, we also publish anthologies, and we even have a chapbook contest called Start a Riot that publishes a QTPOC writer who hasn't published before. So we give them their debut publication as well.
That's amazing. You are just sharing the love. You're not only successful in what you do, but you're sharing that with the masses. And I liked what you said about it being a social justice to do so. That mindset is just beautiful. You must know that about yourself, right?
I know it's beautiful to be a literary citizen. If you're going to be a writer with any kind of capacity, you need to give back to your community, because it's very difficult to be an artist in America. And I think the more that you serve others, the more it comes back to you. So in some ways, it's selfish. You know, it's just, you know how it is. Love isn't finite. It's the more you spread it, the more there is. And I think we all need that right now.
Absolutely. Miah, thank you so much for being here with us today. Your message is so beautiful. Please get on it. Find this gentleman. He's fabulous. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We so appreciate you being on the Etiquette Show today.
Thanks so much, Conchetta.
Thank you. Talk to you soon, guys.
Hi guys, this is Lucia reporting to you in the heart of New York City in the beautiful Times Square with the Etiquette Show. Today, we're going to find out how single New Yorkers feel about dating during the pandemic and what trends they have been noticing. Hi guys, this is Lucia with the Etiquette Show, and with me I have
Max Acosta.
Lucero Acosta. And how has Corona impacted your love life?
I don't really have a love life, but just in general, well, I love my family and friends. Not being able to be close to them or express affection, love and affection in a physical way by hugging, by being close, looking at each other in the eye. It just feels distant and isolated.
I remember, he's my brother, so I remember when we went to our sister's house to see our niece and nephew, and we were able to hug them. So that was really, really sad, because we used to, as a family, we're always hugging each other. So it's very hard not to hug them and not to be able to celebrate our birthday together like we used to. So it has an impact for us more in the family than partners, you know, like.
And then before pre-coronavirus, it used to be exciting and fun being close to one another, whereas now it's scary and anxiety-inducing. I'm scared of people being like close to each other, and we shouldn't be that way.
Oh, that's so true. Like, we all deserve to be close to one another, you know? Yeah. So, how was your love life before the pandemic?
Well, I would say yeah, physical contact is part of being a human. That part was taken away from us. It does feel like strange and lonely.
How about people that got the vaccine though?
Oh, that's very exciting.
Yeah.
That's very exciting. Hopefully, everyone will be vaccinated by this summer and things can go back to normal.
And then you guys can hug your whole family. You guys can have birthdays together. Then yeah. So,
yeah. I'm looking forward to the summer, especially electric boots.
Yeah, the electric. Is there anything else you guys want to share? No. Okay, well, thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. And there you have it. This is Studio reporting to you in Times Square. Now back to you in the studio.